I don't win now, I don't know if I ever can.
This will be an incredible upset, and it's going to happen again.
I didn't want to muck this up. Like, I didn't want to muck up my opportunity.
What do you feel like is a part of your story that you feel like most people don't know about or goes unnoticed?
You know, when I signed to New Mexico, everyone's like, oh, why New Mexico? It's like, that was my only offer. I tried to get signed when I was 16. I hadn't ran all that fast. Again, I didn't have all the offers. I wasn't this, big, sexy recruit. I had a couple of years there from when I was about 14 to 16 that just things were not clicking super well. I found running and I was like, this is really interesting. There's no skill here. It's how long can you hurt for? The work that you put in, you're going to see those results on the other side of it. It's just another way of making my life suck, and that's my biggest goal. Body should just do what it's fucking told. Sometimes it doesn't, and the reason it doesn't is because of, cutting corners. Got everything I could out of that. I love going into a stadium and the pressure's on and just coming out and performing. That's the kind of stuff that drives me. I'm the world champion.
Josh Kerr with a performance of his lifetime.
It's my title if anyone wants to come talk some shit. I'm here for you. I think I can be the most medal 1500 meter runner of all time. I think that would be pretty awesome.
You do kind of embody that like MJ spirit, that Kobe spirit, that like Patrick Mahomes spirit.
Running is such a short-lived sport. If you don't want to have regrets, then you have to kind of invest and push yourself. Progress is key. Comparison is the thief of joy.
And the wisdom of world champion, Olympic silver medalist, Josh Kerr. Ladies and gentlemen, they're already calling this the podcast of the year, not because of me, not because of this podcast, but because of the man on the other side of the screen, Mr. Josh Kerr, Mr. World Champion, Mr. Olympic medalist. How you doing this morning, man?
I'm doing very well. The Wi-Fi and the internet is showing my age, but other than that, I'm very glad to be here.
Let's start with that because I think a lot of people know about this, but I'd love to dive into it deeper. Even when you came up to me in Seattle and we started talking, and I asked if you'd do a podcast, you were like, reach out to this person or this thing, because you're all you care about is running, which I love, I respect, but I feel like you're one of the only people out there who is like that. I think most people scroll on Instagram while they kick up their feet in their Normatex. Why are you like that? When did that start? And how much value does that bring you?
Yeah. So I think, the tough part is that, you go from being, an athlete that's really just focused on running, eating and sleeping. And then, you have to work with all these different brands. You have to work with all, these different media outlets and, you have to stay within contract and you have to, post a certain amount of times and all this stuff. And so, to allow me to continue having the success that I do, I thought it was really important to bring in a team of people that allowed me to do that efficiently, but also focus on my running path. And it's been fun. It's really enjoyable to do it with a lot of people alongside you. And I'm trying to show that on the YouTube a little bit that, we have a great team of people around me so that I can just continue to be curious on this sport and see how far I can take it myself and see how far I can push the body, but also align it with working with brands and being able to get paid and promote myself in the sport as well.
Just as a human being, is it hard not really having a phone? I know you have a burner phone. I'm thinking back to the old podcast days when you talked to Dave about this, but is it hard at all? Do you have temptation to be on it more, or what does that look like?
Yeah, I think,
even as a human outside the sport.
Yeah, no, definitely. I definitely have my burner right now because I broke my phone, and so this is my burner. It's pretty awesome. Takes a terrible.
Looks photo. Like from 2005.
Takes a terrible photo, but yeah, to be honest, it's really nice. I think. It depending on the time of year, like I'll go back to a normal phone a lot of the year, and sometimes I'll re-download Instagram or figure out what's going on in the running world. So that's why I'm very into podcasts, because it allows me to know kind of what's going on in the world of running, but it allows you to kind of stay in your bubble as much as possible and I don't know, just stay. I mean, the amount of time that I was losing just scrolling around or losing time with my naps or, trying to reset before the next run. Like, this is the kind of stuff that, if you're trying to find the 0.01 of a percent, like these are little things that you can do. And yeah, it's not as fun, but I think we can all definitely take a couple of minutes off from looking at our phones. But I do have some funny apps on there, and I play some real weird games. But yeah.
Where would you say that drive comes from? Because, I talk to a lot of people, and I feel like it's very, very rare to be that locked in, that dialed in. And something I really appreciate about you is when I see you on the start line, like, I know you're not messing around, and I know you didn't mess around in your preparation. And I don't think everyone can say that.
Yeah, and there's room for all of it in the sport. Some people thrive on, taking a bit more of a relaxed approach to things. And for me, it's I want to turn around at the end of my career and go, I got everything I could out of that. And, I really spent time and got curious with this sport and tried to figure out what my real strong points were. And I worked on those. And that's the only way that you can leave the sport without regrets, I think. If I have a bunch more silver medals, I'm not going to walk away from the sport being like, I could have done this, I could have done that. And that's what I like about it. I like it being a situation where the result is the result, but the work is the work. And so if you're ever worried about or stressed about a race or an outcome of a race, it's all to do with input. And so if you're really happy with it, the effort level that you put in your input, which is within your control, then you have to be happy with the output and the result. And so it lets you be a little bit calmer with going into races. And, if there's any kind of younger athletes listening, like, it helps with pre-race nerves a lot. It's like, I've done everything I can. Like, the result's going to be the result. And I'm going to stay present and do my job today. And, the dice are going to fall the way they're going to fall.
I think a lot of people are familiar with your upbringing in sport, your year at New Mexico, a lot of your journey at Brooks, and you've done extensive podcasts about this yourself. You've done other media talking extensively about your journey. So I don't want to waste our time focusing on it in this conversation, but something I do want to ask you, what do you feel like is a part of your story that you feel like most people don't know about or goes unnoticed in your journey to get to where you are today?
That's a great question. I think, a lot of people see, I had a reasonably successful, or I had a successful NCAA program and career, and I was able to sign out of my junior year, which is nice. But I think the parts that people don't see is that, when I signed to New Mexico, everyone's like, oh, why New Mexico? It's like, that was my only offer. Like, I tried to get signed when I was 16 because I left school at 17, and I hadn't ran all that fast. I think I signed to New Mexico as a 352, 1500 guy and a 153. And then I ended up having a great summer season before I arrived, and ended up running 344 after I signed and before I arrived here. And then I think it was still 153, but I took a big jump there. But I had a couple of years there from when I was about 14 to 16 that just things were not clicking super well. And I think every athlete goes through that. I think, high school sport is a whole different ballgame now. It's a whole different sport almost. It's a professional sport, and so that will look different now. But I think steady progress was my only kind of hope. I was like, I'm getting better every year. I'm surrounded by some really great people that are super knowledgeable, and so I just wanted to focus on that and not worry too much about not having the results I wanted. And I think one thing that people always ask, like, oh, how do you get recruited to college, and what times I have to run? And the only reason I got recruited to New Mexico was Joe Franklin told me, I see you win a lot of races. I think that's a skill that you can't teach, and I think we can get you to run better. But I want you because you're a winner. And I was in a small pond. I was racing a lot of Scottish races and some British races, but I was able to win a lot of them. And that was why New Mexico kind of was attracted to signing me on. But again, I didn't have all the offers. I wasn't this big sexy recruit. Steady progress. That's all I've been doing over the years.
Speaking of winning, at age 19, you win that infamous indoor title. You beat Ed Chesrek and Ches. How justified did you feel, one, with your coach and hey, you bet on me, it paid off, as well as every other coach with their stopwatch standing there who passed up on you?
Yeah, so I actually went a little bit earlier than that. It was I won European Juniors before I came out, and it was the lap of honor there was a bunch of NCAA coaches that were like, who turned me down, that were like, hey, like, we come to Oklahoma State or come to all these universities. And I was like, nah, I'm going to be a Lobo. And that was like a really fun time for me. And so that was like that moment for me. But after NCAAs, it was like, oh, okay, I'm just, it's like a business. You have it in your small area, and then you figure out how you win in that area, and then you press out and you try and dominate the next region. And that was the most important thing to me. Is people have imposter syndrome and people like have problems with taking that next step. It's the same thing you've been doing, like the same way that you had to kind of problem solve to go out and win is the same thing on a world stage, in the US, in the NCAA, in the UK, everywhere. It's just problem solving. What can I do? What's worked? What hasn't worked? Like, what can I keep trying? And that's the way you keep getting better, I think.
Did you feel like you had a chip on your shoulder at any point in that early stage? And even presently, do you feel like you have a chip on your shoulder? I know you've done big things in the sport, but you seem like the type of personality, based on hearing you talk, of like, you're not going to be satisfied till everyone considers you, the greatest.
Yeah. We're in such a great era of 1500 meter running that I think regardless of what I do from now, like, I'll be remembered as part of that. But what can I do to continue to, press my name to be the guy in this era? It's hard for sure, but I think consistency is what's going to show me. I've been making world finals and Olympic finals since 2019, and I haven't missed a team since 2017. So that's kind of the level I'm trying to bring. But I do think when I came to the US as a Brit, there was part of me that's like, I'm here for a job. I left home 5,000 miles away, and I'm not looking to fuck around, pretty much. Even though I did a little bit in the start of freshman year, I just didn't quite get a handle on the nutrition side of things or the sleep. But other than that, it was like, I'm here to do a job, and I want to do it to the best of my ability. And so, yeah, it was. I wouldn't say I've ever had a chip on my shoulder, but there's definitely the voice in the back of my head of like, are you doing enough? Are you kind of fulfilling this potential that you have?
For you, leaving 5,000 miles away from home, was that hard? What was the transition like? And do you ever think about the sacrifices you've made to make running your full-time job, and maybe connect it to some of those big global moments, whether it's making a team, winning a world championships, where I'm sure you feel justified in that sacrifice? Yeah,
I'm very lucky to have a supportive family and parents that helped me with the process for New Mexico. And they actually ended up having to come out with me because I was too young to sign my own papers. So that was super embarrassing. But it was also awesome at the same time, where they were able to come out with me, and they were like able to see me in this environment, and they were like, oh, like, your student halls have like a pool and like a, like all these awesome facilities, like you're pretty much just on holiday here, but you got to go to class and do your job. So that was nice, but college transitions are always hard. I think people need to give themselves like a little bit of slack. I think in the first 6 months, it's funny. The head coach told me, he's pulled me aside, and he's like, if I hear that you're at a party, you're off the team, kind of thing. And, that hit me so hard. For like a year and a half, like I didn't go to a single party once. And it was like randomly brought up in my sophomore year, and I was like, you told me you were going to kick me off, so I didn't go anywhere near any parties or anything. I'm also like 17, 18 years old, so I can't go out. And he was like, he laughed it off, like, oh, you took that seriously? That's insane. Like, oh, well, I just really didn't want to muck this up. Like, I didn't want to muck up my opportunity. And I think it worked out longer term, but there's some fun stuff along the way. But college is a tough transition. You got to give yourself some time.
You said you listen to podcasts. Sounds like you're pretty in touch with the sport. How much are you following college and high school milers these days? I mean, it's ridiculous at both levels.
Yeah, a good amount. Obviously I was at Brooks PR. I saw those guys kind of battling it out. trying to keep up with high school milers. It's difficult because they're just coming out of everywhere. It's difficult to keep track of them because they're high schools versus colleges. And then obviously I keep a good eye on collegiate miles, just because I want to train with some of these guys, and you know, we brought out a couple on visits, and you know, I want to stay knowledgeable in the sport. And I think also the NCAA normally get one-ish into a world team every year. So it's always important to see kind of their strengths and weaknesses and things like that. Because if you're going to make an American team, you're going to be in the battle for a final, and you're always in the conversation. So yeah, I think it develops great milers. You know, the conference, regionals, nationals kind of way of doing things is it creates awesome milers, and it kind of just sorts out the best from the rest. So yeah, I enjoy watching it. I think, you know, this year was interesting. I think we're kind of going back to slower miles, which is kind of funny. But yeah, there's a lot of talent out there, man. And I think it's NIL have kept those athletes in college for a little bit longer, which is really fun for us to watch. I would not like to be in college right now. I think, you know, that's pretty rough. These guys are probably more professional than us sometimes. So it's pretty fun to watch.
I want to fill you in on two things. Do you know the name Josiah Tostenson?
I have heard of them. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So he's running, I think, UW this year. I would call him a loose friend, and he's been on the podcast many times. Really fun kid. But he like Josh, literally in the middle of a workout, split 147 for an 8. I'm not gonna hate on his coach or anything, but that is like that. I saw that and I was like, man, like you said, high schoolers are training like pros. I mean, 147 and I don't know what the purpose of the workout was. Maybe it was like a soft time trial or something, but that was crazy. And then the other crazy thing, I'm just gonna be like your high school news boy here. Quinton Nauman, crazy. So this kid's from Iowa, which I really appreciate the kids from these small states that don't have the competition or resources. Literally at his state meet, I want to see if I can find it. I remember off the top of my head, I think he did the SMR. They have an SMR. He split like 147 high. He's a junior, by the way. Split 147 high, and then the next. This was in like a 2-day stretch. I think 147 high in the relay, wins it. Then he goes out in the 2-mile runs 8:58, solos it, wins that, and then the same day he goes 149 in the 8, wins that, and closes the meet with the 3:59 1600. And he ran all of that in like a 48-hour span, which was crazy. And then this kid's got wheels. Here's where I think he'll be really, really good. Only a junior. He ran at Hoka Festival Miles. They come through 1200 and 303. He closes in 54 and runs 3:58. And I was just like, that's crazy.
What are we doing, man? You know, me and you, I'm going to be out of a job soon. Huh? I tell you what,
come back to the podcast world.
I know I'm gonna have to start sitting kick back up, or if you're taking on some interns, that'd be great. You know what it is with me? I think I wanna support all of it. I really do. But I think what gets me about this era is it's not like, let's not name names, but it's not these guys that I'm worried about as much as a lot of people are. It's the guys that are doing amazing but aren't near that level yet that were me. And it's like those guys in this sport, guys and girls in this sport, need to keep going because their potential is their ceiling is super high, but they're maybe just kind of getting through the training and, you know, maybe had a couple injuries, having a couple of growth spurts and stuff like that, where, you know, if you're a few steps behind, even good 10 or 15 steps behind, there's a place for you in this sport. There really is. And that's what worries me, is that, you know, the athletes that are taking the spotlight and running unbelievably fast times and winning all these races, it's the guys that are 5th, 6th, and 7th that I'm like, you guys need to keep like the faith, because that is the transition that makes you to be the best in the world, because you need to figure out how to win, and it's not coming easily or naturally, and that's fine. But I worry that those set of people leave the sport, and then the highest set of people have overtrained to get to that spot, and they leave the sport, and then our next crop is a little bit like, what happened here? Right? Did we work a little bit too hard, or, you know, is the coaches motivated by money or trying to get you to the right school, or are we looking at the long-term approach of things? Like the way that my coaching staff and my parents always worked was, no one's going to remember the under 13 Scottish champion or the under 15 Scottish champion or the under 17 Scottish champion. They're going to remember who the British champion was that year at the senior level. And so what can we do to make that next step to get there? And so that's what I want to see a little bit more from the longevity standpoint of these athletes. I think the athletes at the top can continue to do that if they're doing it smart. But I think that, you know, that next kind of few groups have got to get themselves, you know, feeling good about themselves a little bit more versus comparing themselves against these athletes that are doing professional. I mean, in 48 hours to do that, I genuinely don't know if I could do that. That seems like a lot. I definitely have to hit some of those in flats, or else my calves and Achilles will be absolutely wrecked.
No, I think it's an excellent analysis. I think my fear is that if you're running those times, and I know Quentin, and he's going to be remember the name, because with how little he trains, quote unquote, he's just ridiculously talented. But it's the people who are running 80 miles a week in high school that I'm like you said, like, where's the sustainability and the longevity? And like you said, what do you truly want out of the sport? And if you can get away with doing less and still running fast, but knowing in the back of your head that you could have done more, I think that's really positive. And I was never anything in high school. But one thing I regret is I had the mindset of, it was terrible. I had the mindset of, if I need to stand on the starting line knowing that I left no stone unturned in high school. No high schooler should ever think that. At the pro level, sure, maybe. But even I think there's a case where it's like you've said, the consistency piece of making world championships, Olympics, like, you know, every year. If there are a few years, maybe you would have tried to squeeze a little 5% extra, like you wouldn't have made it healthy. You wouldn't even given yourself the shot. And as you can see with someone like you or even Hawker at the Olympics last year, sometimes all you need is a shot and it pans out. And I think, we are, that's the problem with social media. And that's why I encourage a lot of kids to get off of it, is because like you can see everything. And just a final thought for you here. This is actually from our newsletter this morning, so it kind of works out well. They wrote, at the end of the day, you are an N1, a single case study, your body, your life, your history. No one else has your exact variables. That's why copy paste training rarely works. You can be inspired by elites, but you can't transplant the workouts into your life and expect the same result. The same caution applies to trendy methods. Just because an idea is new or gaining traction online doesn't mean it's right for you. Too often we chase novelty instead of clarity. Instead of asking what's the best workout, ask, why am I doing this?
Yeah, that's awesome. That's amazing. I think you're right. It's another reason I started this YouTube channel, because I run 70 miles a week, and I've never ran anything over 70. I think 76 is the max I've ever ran. I did that a couple of years ago. And I think a lot of what you can do is outside the sport. A lot of it's, gym work or, prehab, or making sure you're getting massages and treatment, and, working on, your mindset and working on your race tactics and all this stuff. You can put as much mileage in that as you want, and you're not going to have any problems. And, I do think in this sport, we don't have a time clock. We have a mileage clock, and it's important to take care of your body, because it will catch up to you. And if people want to really push in high school and make money, like it's their prerogative. And I think that, you can do that if you would like. But if you want to make it to the top, you've got to be really patient. And, it's very difficult. I think Hobbs Kessler is like a great example of the opposite of what I'm saying. Like, he just had an awesome high school career and kind of got thrown to the wolves a little bit in the first year of pro, but then figured it out and look at him now. Or even in the last few years, he's been incredible. But it's really hard. Like, I can only take it from my perspective, but it's hard to do it year on year, and you can't skip any steps. You have to have the races. You have to go through collegiately or in the professional scene. You have to get you've got to get your ass kicked like bad and figure it out and get to the next step. And there's no amount of podcasts, sadly, that you can learn how to lose and how to win enough. You just have to kind of go through it yourself.
Yeah, super good thoughts there. That's why I think coaches have an extreme responsibility, if they have big talent, to control it well. because their ego makes them want to think, how many state championships can we win? How many records can we break? Can we get an NIL from New Balance or Brooks or On? If he runs this time, we can. Versus, okay, I've got a super rare talent. He can make the Olympics one day. What does that look like? How do I guide him there? The other thing I'll say to this piece that I think went unspoken, because this was the boat I was in, and maybe, who knows, it could have panned out differently. But I think there are kids who generally know they have a ceiling in high school and aren't going to run in college. And if that's the case, and you want to run 75 miles a week to be the skinny kid in your community who runs 75 miles a week and you're seen around town with your shirt off and your short shorts, go for it. Like, if you truly enjoy that, and you might be able to squeeze an extra few seconds out of yourself because you're not going to run at the next level, go for it. And that's where I think it's important to sit down and ask yourself, like, what do I truly want? And then make sure your actions are lined up with that. Because if you want to run college or pro, yeah, you are going to have to be a little more patient. I think it's just unrealistic to have it all at once. It's really hard to be the best of the best, middle school, high school, like college, pro. I mean, Josh, last year after Brooks PR, I saw a middle school miler competes in the middle school mile, and then he did 20 by 400 after the race. And I'm like, you're in 8th grade, dude.
I don't think I've ever done 20 by 400. I don't know. This is the problem, is like, the social media side of things is like, oh, this is how you get great at running. It's like, no, it's not, dude. You get great at running by listening to your coaching staff and listening to your body and doing what works for you, and not, like, again, it's just not cookie cutter. You got to figure out what works for you, because you can't find that out online. You got to find it out with trying different stuff. But yeah, the problem is there's all these different trends, and the double sessions and high mileage and, you know, low intensity, all this stuff. Especially from a young age, I think that's I don't know. That's my personal opinion. I don't think it's a great idea.
Right.
But, you know, maybe I could be wrong.
To that point of consistency, because you mentioned you don't run that much mileage, your workouts, your training isn't necessarily that flashy. Trend I see a lot of athletes fall into is thinking that they need to run faster in workouts than they ever did before, or do more mileage than they ever did before to run times they never did before. For you and your own experience, you're chasing, you know, records at this point, world records at this point, and you're not doing more to get there. Would you say the confidence then just comes from the health and the consistency?
Yeah. It's. I think that you'll find that the athletes with the most success are the ones with the least problems, and so, you know, we definitely played around with it in the fall of 23. We're like, okay, we're going to run 7 days. I have a full day off on Saturdays. And we're like, okay, we're just going to throw a cross training day in on Saturday. We did it for like a week. And, you know, me, Danny, and Julian sat back down. We're like, why are we doing this? Like, I'm the world champion. I just was the best in the world. Why are we trying to get better? Because we can't, there's a limit. Everyone has a limit. And so you have to find it and make sure you're, you know, staying true to yourself. And sometimes, you know, just if you can go through another whole year without big problems, you're going to find a little bit more success, because you've got more knowledge, you have more experience in the sport, you know how to race a little bit better. And, you know, I dial in different things, and it's, you know, it's nutrition, it's sleep, it's hydration, it's, you know, travel, it's, you know, cognitive load. It's all these different things that can allow you to get more out of training sessions and feel better. But it doesn't need to change. It doesn't need to go higher mileage or, you know, faster sessions, but they might naturally become faster because you're doing all the work outside of the sport to a higher level. And so, but you can only find that out yourself. And I think for me, the reason my mileage is where it's at is because, you know, if I try a little bit more, I'm like, I feel a little bit flat and I don't feel as poppy for a 1500 guy. And if I try less, then I just don't feel as strong. So it's kind of the way it's just worked out. I think I ran around 60-ish, 55 to 60 miles in college. And then from there, I just kind of pushed up the long run a little bit. And that's pretty much it.
Speaking of some of the stuff you're doing outside of training, I think it was Isaiah who told me about the team cold plunge routine. How long are you lasting?
I do 3 minutes and 26 seconds, weirdly enough. And so, yeah, as much as I can, it's more of the routine of getting in there at 5 a.m. than it is how long can you stay in there. I think that's the way that I like to use it. And, you know, Zay he's good at it. Julian's really good at it. Henry's good at it. a lot of these guys, to do what we do, you got to be kind of tough. I think the consistency of it is lacking on a lot of these guys' side. I'm the only guy that really gets in multiple times a week or minimum once a week, non-negotiable. And so it's just another way of making my life suck. And that's my biggest goal is, be surrounded by luxury, but making your life suck. That's the most important thing, to stay humble and hungry.
Do you ever hear that quote from Seneca? I think it was him, one of the Stoics back in the day. He goes, the body must be treated rigorously so that it's not disobedient to the mind.
That's correct. I'm going to get that. I'm getting it written on my gym wall, actually, because I heard it from, obviously, yeah, it's very old, but my performance coach was the one that kind of mentioned that. And I was like, yeah, it's so true, because, when you're in these biggest moments, your body should just do what it's fucking told. And sometimes it doesn't. And the reason it doesn't is because of, cutting corners or, skipping on your, the diet you're supposed to be on, or, having a bad night's sleep, and all this stuff that starts to kind of weaken the mind and just kind of lets your body run awry. So yeah, your body's always got more in you. You just have to convince your mind of trusting it.
It's fascinating because I'm a big proponent. I'm very aware that a lot of young athletes listen. So to the training conversation, I'm very mindful of the things I'm putting out there. I want to influence athletes in a good direction. But when I'm talking to someone like you, who's trying to be one of the best, if not the best to ever do it, I do appreciate a level of obsession, and your whole life is about running, and you want to win, and you want to set records. Something I think I really appreciate you in this conversation, and just following your life outside of this podcast, is like you watch Quarterback on Netflix, or you watch, Michael Jordan, The Last Dance. And it's like these athletes were obsessive about their sport. Kobe Bryant would wake up at 3 a.m. to go to the gym for the third time that day, to get up shots with a broken wrist. Like these people, it was all about their sport. And that's why they were so good. You might disagree with me, but I feel like I feel like runners can cut corners, specifically at the highest level too. Like it's like, again, to the social media conversation, it's like, let me get my workout in, and then, I'm good the other, 21, 22 hours a day. I'm just going to watch Netflix, kick my feet up. You are, I think, one of the only people on the circuit I know of who it's like professional chef, like everything is dialed in your life. How much pride do you take in that? And I know I kind of asked about this earlier, but like you do kind of embody that like MJ spirit, that Kobe spirit, that like Patrick Mahomes spirit that I don't feel like we see in the sport of running.
It's a great question. It got brought up actually a couple of weeks ago, and I was having an interview, and they were talking about the Michael Jordans and the Kobes and stuff like that, and I was like, the problem is they weren't their mindset wasn't appreciated until afterwards, because sometimes it can come across brash and a problem, and media don't like them because of it, and teammates don't like them because of it, but they're just trying to get the most out of themselves. But when they retire and you look back, you're like, wow, that was so motivating, and like I can't believe they were able to do that. But like, to be a teammate of one of those guys, that would have sucked. Like, you have to get the most out of yourself during that time, and I just kind of take the same approach a little bit, where I don't have the time to be lazy and be proud of my career. And I just had to take kind of note, and I had to look at myself and go, I'm not maxing out in these areas. I can be a lot better than I am. What can I do to do this? And, I'm very lucky to be in a position to be able to have all these people around me and be able to, pay them and let them do their job, and allows me to do mine. But running is such a short-lived sport. And if you don't want to have regrets, and you have to kind of invest and push yourself. And yeah, I think I enjoy finding out how good I can be at the sport a lot. I think, the sessions are great and all this stuff, but yeah, it's the other 22 hours a day that I find incredibly important. My chef's down there right now doing a lot of work, which is probably why you can hear in the background all this different stuff going on. But you can't train and fuel properly and know your macros to a T and set out all the podcasts and make sure you're hitting all your deliverables on your contracts, and having conversations about starting a new, I don't know, apparel line with Brooks, or if it's starting like doing all these business, but you can't do all that and also like train to the highest level. And so if you want to be able to do all of it, you have to employ people to help you with it. And I have a great team of people around me, and I have a great family that understand that, I would love to be at the World Championships in 2029. That's my goal. But it's not easy to get there. And so what can I do to allow my body to be able to rest and recover, but also do what I need to do? So it's boring, man. It's, I would invite many people to come and shadow me, and they would hate it. They would hate what I do. And most of my teammates hate what I do and don't do what I do because it's hard. It sucks. Getting up at 5 sucks. Getting in the cold water sucks. Meeting with a performance coach for multiple hours a week, studying film, getting my nutrition down to a T with my chef. Like there's just stuff that we need to do in this sport to be great, or for me to be great, that I don't think people do. And because it sucks, it does, but that's okay. I enjoy it.
Why do you employ this drive to running? Why not finance or whatever other Scottish people are into? No hate to the people out there. I just don't know your country that well. Like, why do you employ this drive into running? Could be any other sport, could be any other endeavor. Was it because you were good at it at a young age? Because why do you love running? Why running?
My dad was a professional rugby player, and my brother was a professional rugby player. He just retired a couple of years ago. And I wanted to be one. I was just too small and also not that great at rugby, which is kind of frustrating. But I found running and I was like, this is really interesting. Back then, there's no skill here. It's how long can you hurt for? And like the work that you put in, you're going to see those results on the other side of it. And I just got obsessed with that. I'm like, this is incredible. Like I knew I wanted to be a professional sport athlete, and I didn't know what sport it was going to be if it wasn't rugby. And when I found running, I was like, this is something that I could find myself doing for a long time. And then it was like, I was then obsessed with like the next step and the next step in college and professional. And I was like, I had this plan. I was like, I need to win at least two NCAA titles, because winning one is kind of easy. I know that sounds stupid, but it is. Like, you can win one. You have like 9 attempts or 8 attempts or something ridiculous to win these. Winning one can be a fluke, but winning 2 shows that you're a champion. So I'll do that, and then a company will reach out. I'll negotiate with them. I'll go with them, and then I'll trust the coach. It'll take me some time, and then I'll work my way up. But it's not an easy thing to do. But I just love that element of it. I love going into a stadium when the pressure's on and just coming out and performing. That level of focus that you have in a packed out stadium. Even, I've got London here in just over 2 weeks, and packed out 60,000 person stadium at home against some pretty awesome competition. That's the kind of stuff that drives me. And I think I can affect the next generation if I storytell in the right way of my journey, and hopefully inspire another generation to push on British miling and British track and field, to be honest.
You're a man of quotes. I feel like you're just so good with these quick one-liners, these statements. Where did this come from? As well as, do you feel like winning Budapest was? I followed the sport for a while, but I feel like it was really after that moment that people really locked into you and started really paying attention. Do you feel like winning that gave you the confidence to then say some of the bold things that you have? And by the way, I'm so here for it. Like, so this is not hate. Keep saying stuff. I love it, because we need to keep running entertaining. And I think, again, we have to compare running to these other sports. Michael Jordan was the most famous shit talker. Kobe Bryant, and it's just like, it excites people. And I think you're onto something. People only talk about it positively afterward, which is funny.
I've always kind of been the same, to be honest. It's just, I'm in a sport where there's only one champion of the year. There is. And we can say it's the Diamond League final or the fastest runner of the year or whatever, but it's the winner of the major. That's just kind of how I see things. And I believe that you have to, if you don't believe in yourself, that no one's going to believe in you. And no one should, if you're not going to put the work in and show that you're the best runner in the world. And internally, I'm very confident in what I do because of the, all the preparation that I have. And yeah, I think, Budapest was a massive moment for me because it was actually probably a pivot moment for me of like, I'd come to the conclusion beforehand, like if I don't win now, I don't know if I ever can, because this is all that I have. This was, the prep camp that I had was unbelievable. I didn't, explored bringing in my first chef, and she did an amazing job. And, I had someone helping me with management stuff and flying upgrading myself to first class and like trying to, really make sure that I wasn't going to cut any corners and going to sleep like every single night. It was just a very rigid camp, and I felt great. And I was like, you know what, like I can't stick my head in the sand and think that people in this sport aren't cheating. And I don't know if I can max out my body anymore. Like this is as robotic as I can make it. And I came to peace with that. And I was like, if this is all the sport is for me, is this like kind of third, fourth, fifth kind of area, then that's, I can't control anyone else. And so going into Budapest, it was very much like this is all I've got. I am willing to take risks in the races. I'm willing to kind of just go for it. And that the result's going to be the result. And so, yeah, it's definitely just trying to focus on not being outcome orientated, just being process orientated. And that's kind of my first one where I was like, oh, like anything is possible in the sport. And I can't wait to keep exploring what else is possible. So yeah, that was a big one for me. Very validating. And then backing it up with a good Olympic performance is another one, really.
Yeah. With the Olympic performance, were you satisfied with that? Or did you leave wanting more? Did you feel hungry for more? Because obviously I know you came there for gold, but as we know, it's so hard to get it done on the day. And any one of those five guys, I feel like could have won.
Yeah. I mean, we're talking about the smallest of margins, and I made no mistakes in my race plan, in my preparation, and that was the result. And so I'm forced to be content and satisfied with it. And it would be incredibly disrespectful to my coaching staff and my brands and my internal team to like not be satisfied with that and not celebrate and be annoyed at myself and, be down and all this stuff. It's like, mate, like you get beat sometimes, and that's okay. Just don't, try and not make it a habit, but you got to keep battering on, and you're not always going to see the results that you think that you deserve, but that's just the results that came out of that day. And I got beaten by a better athlete, which is always okay. Like, he's evidently put the work in and was ready for that moment more than I was. So it was mixed emotions, to be honest. If we were ending the season right there, then I would have been fine with it. But having to keep going really sucked, to be honest.
Yeah. Weird calendar year. One of the many flaws in the sport of running. We got to end with the world champs of the Olympics, but another podcast for another day. Speaking of the 1500, the state of it this year, what's your take on that? What's your perspective on that? Jakob, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think he's really raced this year. I feel like guys are kind of all over the map. Grand Slam kind of changed some things with people racing early, but they weren't necessarily fully fit because you don't want to be with the world champs being so late. So do you feel like for me as a fan of the sport, do you think the 15 will be as exciting this year because there isn't as much, like, correct me, maybe you'll start something, maybe he'll start something, but like you and Jakob probably aren't going to go at it to the same extent you did last year. Do you think we'll see another year that's really replicated in terms of like the energy and excitement that we had going into the Olympics last year?
Yeah, I think we put a lot of work into that excitement for sure. And I think it stems from a lot of places, but a lot of it's to do with I'm the current world champion, and obviously Cole's the current Olympic champion, and Cole's a really nice guy. He's a tough competitor, but that's not really his personality to kind of be outspoken, I don't think, from what I've realized and seen. But look, the 1500 title is always an ego title. It is like, and I think from my side of things, I want to reprove myself as why I'm consistently in this conversation of the best 1500 guy in this era. And I think this is a really important one for that, because we have a lot of guys with one title, but no one with two. And so it's, I think, going to be one of the most important titles to get. This one right here, you know, I'm sure, yeah, it's just such a, it's a mixed, there's a lot going on in the running world. You're right. And there's a lot going on in everyone's lives as well. So, you know, everyone's kind of head down and working, but these kind of June, July times don't really bother me in any way, unless they're world records. It's kind of pointless, I think, to go out and, you know, everyone has their own strategy. Everyone has their own idea of the year, but you know, some of the guys that have run as fast as they have, like, it's difficult to get through the round still. It's still difficult to, you know, to try and even have one medal. And so you have to kind of just take everything with a grain of salt, focus on yourself, and make sure you're ready to go when the time comes. But it's a tough landscape out there, I think, especially as Americans as well. And the Americans are coming out pretty hot in 8 and 15, and I'm excited to watch their trials, and I'm kind of rooting obviously for my teammates in that situation. But it's going to be a fun one. I think once we get to the championships is going to be the time where that's where the hype's really going to start. I think, especially through the rounds and things like that, I think the 1500 is still going to be one to watch. But right now it's just, there's so many different personalities that are running fast. And I don't know if we're confident enough to come out and say that they want to win a world championship. So, I mean, it's my title. If anyone wants to come talk some shit, I'm here for you. I'll be here to receive, and you just let me know what's going on. But it's, I truly believe I'm still the front runner for it, just because track record, to be honest.
Yeah, you're very, I mean, consistency is a theme in your career, in this episode even. And I think that's really inspiring. It's like, yeah, you're one guy that people can always bet on to be there, whether you're coming out on top or not. If you don't come out on top, you're right there. And that speaks testaments. As we start to wrap up this conversation, being mindful of time, legacy wise, like what do you feel like is left unchecked that you want to do before you hang up the spikes?
There's one stat that gets me, to be honest, and I never used to be a stat guy, but after last year, I'm now, there's one thing, and it will keep me in the sport through 28, is no one's ever medaled 3 separate times in the 1500 at the Olympics. And so it would be a nice storyline for it to be bronze, silver, gold. But regardless of
I like that.
Of that is, you know, I think Sevko obviously has 2 Olympic gold medals. But I do think no one's ever had 3. So can I stay in this sport long enough and stay at the top long enough where I'm in the conversation to go after the Olympic gold in 2028? Yes, I think so. There's a lot of work between now and then. But at the baseline, I think I can be the most medaled 1500 meter runner of all time. I think that would be pretty awesome. And, you know, these world championships are a fun one to get right. And so, yeah, if I can get this year right and then make sure I'm going after that gold in 28, I think I can hang my spikes up. A pretty proud guy. But all that is for me is almost just validation to be able to talk to the next generation of athletes and try and be a source of information and help, so that athletes are continuing to do it the right way. You know, there's a lot more money in this sport, and so there's definitely going to be people to convince to do it the wrong way. And I'm trying to fight the good fight and show what it's like to do it from an authentic, right way of doing this sport.
We've talked about kind of how history is viewed after the fact. There's also the saying, you know, I think something like winners always write history. What do you think people will say about you 10, 20 years from now when they look back on your career and legacy? And will it be different than the present narrative? That's
a great question. I don't particularly know what people say about me now. I would say a mixture of emotions. A lot of people definitely let me know that they thought I was a bit of a dick, and then they met me and they don't think that anymore. So that's cool. But no, I just hope they thought, whenever we saw Josh on the start line, we knew it was going to be a fun, interesting race, and we had to tune in, and that's hopefully how it is now. Obviously, my track persona is ruthless in what I do, and that's why I think I get the results I get. I don't like a lot of the bullshit around, and I don't really have patience to give the politically correct answer sometimes, and I'll feed into some of the media stuff sometimes, and that'll get me in some hot water. But I don't know. I'm just having fun with it and being super curious in this sport of how I can continue to get better and push the sport to the newer heights and hopefully more eyeballs and grow it as much as we can. But yeah, it's for people to decide. I hope whatever happens, people can just see the authentic way of me going about this sport, trying to be the best in the world. So
I love it, man. Final serious question for you. It can be anything. What's the final takeaway message for the audience today, for the listener today who looks up to you?
Yeah, I think regardless of the position that you're in track and field, progress is key. And so regardless if you're winning races or you're at the back of your local 5K, if you love this sport and you want to get better, just keep looking at what you're doing, keep trying to get 1% better across the board. Progress is key, and I think what they say is comparison is the thief of joy. And so just make sure you're only comparing yourself to yourself and not worrying about too much about what's going on social media, and you'll find some real love in the sport, I think, long term.
Progress over perfection. Love that saying. Two final quick rapid fire questions. First one, let's say we'll call it a mile over a 15 because I'm American. How fast could you run a mile blindfolded?
Blindfolded? If you gave me, if I did it in like a desert, because that means I'm not going to run into anything, I could see a sub 5. If you're saying on a track.
Really? Vision matters that much?
Yeah.
Really? Interesting.
Yeah. It's all, listen, if you've got a pair of Oakleys on, you see, this is, it makes a huge difference. This is at least a second, a lap for a 1500. On a track I would just be so scared to run into something, I think. So, I don't know.
Right.
I'd struggle.
Sure. Final question for you. The question I ask every guest on every single podcast. I always love asking people from Europe this question because they're a little more in touch with him. But you're cooking dinner for Gordon Ramsay, so no chef. You can't utilize a chef. What are you cooking Gordon for dinner?
Damn, I watched a lot of Gordon stuff. I think I would try my hand at a beef Wellington. I think I would have to try.
Ooh, okay.
I'm a steak and mash and veg kind of guy. I'm sure I could point you to what my chef's doing right now, which is not anything within my realm of possibility. But yeah, I think keeping it simple, maybe like a nice steak. He does like a bacon sandwich, so actually I'll stick with that bacon sandwich. I'm gonna go with that.
Okay.
Simple,
I love it.
Perfect.
Amazing. Josh, sincerely from the bottom of my heart, thank you for coming on the podcast today. I think you were always one of the legacy type guests that I've wanted to have on, and I shared this story in Seattle, but I've been a fan. Took some time after you broke my heart beating King Chess, but I think there was a part of me that became a fan that day. And man, as someone who has been in the sport from the age of 5 and followed it religiously from middle school, like, you make this sport exciting. And yeah, so at least from my perspective, that's going to be your legacy, that any race that you turned up to, it was a good time. It was a fun time, and I couldn't keep my eyes off the TV. So keep crushing it. This one was a pleasure. And yeah, I'm excited to see all the things you'll accomplish in the years to come.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. This was very fun and hopefully informative for everyone listening. So yeah, I appreciate it, and keep doing what you're doing.